Daniel Carter tightened his grip on the worn handle of his toolkit as he stepped off the landing ramp of the Starlight. The air was thin and cold, carrying with it the faint metallic tang of decay. Around him stretched the ruins of what had once been a thriving human colony. Now it was nothing more than crumbling buildings, twisted metal, and silence so heavy it pressed against his chest. He glanced over his shoulder at Lavra Bennett, who stood hesitating at the edge of the ships. Shadow, her face pale under the dim light of Epsilon 7's distant sun. "Are you coming?" Daniel asked, his voice low but steady. Lavra nodded quickly, pulling her jacket tighter around herself before stepping down onto the cracked surface beneath them. "It feels wrong," she said softly, looking around. "Like we're trespassing." Daniel didn't respond immediately. Instead, he scanned the area, taking in the remnants of humanity scattered like broken bones across the landscape. Crumbled walls leaned precariously, their surfaces scarred by time and neglect. Rusting vehicles lay abandoned where they had been left, half buried in dirt and debris. Somewhere far off, the wind whistled through empty streets, carrying with it the faint echo of footsteps that weren't there. They were here for answers, or at least that's what Daniel kept telling himself. For years, historians and scientists had debated the fate of humanity after the savage war that tore apart the galaxy. Some believed survivors fled to unknown corners of space. Others thought extinction was inevitable. But no one really knew. All that remained were whispers, legends passed down through generations about colonies vanishing overnight, ships disappearing without a trace, and strange experiments conducted in secret. Epsilon 7 was supposed to be different. Records indicated this colony had survived longer than most, perhaps even holding out until the very end. If anyone could uncover clues about what happened to humanity, it would be here. Daniel led the way toward the largest structure still standing, a massive dome-shaped building that might have once served as a central hub for the colony. Its exterior was pockmarked with age, but parts of it seemed intact enough to explore. As they approached, Lavra paused beside a pile of rubble, crouching down to examine something glinting in the dirt. "What is it?" Daniel asked, turning back to look at her. She picked up the object carefully, brushing away layers of grime to reveal a small, tarnished badge. Engraved on its surface were the words Colonial Security Division. She held it up for Daniel to see. "Someone important must have worn this," she murmured. "Maybe a leader?" Daniel shrugged, though his curiosity was piqued. "Could be. Let's keep moving." Inside the dome, the air was stale and thick with dust. The floor was littered with fragments of furniture, shattered glass, and papers, yellowed with age. Daniel pulled out a flashlight and swept the beam across the room, illuminating rows of desks and chairs that looked as though they'd been hastily abandoned. On one desk, he noticed a datapad lying face down. He picked it up cautiously, pressing the power button. To his surprise, the screen flickered to life, displaying static-filled images and fragmented text. "This is promising," he muttered, scrolling through the corrupted files. Most of the information was unreadable, but occasional phrases jumped out. Project Exodus, Calith technology, and reckoning imminent. Lavra came up beside him, peering over his shoulder. "What does it mean?" "I don't know yet," Daniel admitted. "But it sounds bad." As they continued exploring, they found more signs of sudden departure, half-eaten meals left on tables, coats hanging neatly on hooks, personal belongings scattered carelessly. It was as if everyone had simply vanished into thin air. The eerie sense of abandonment grew heavier with each step, pressing down on them like an invisible weight. Then, deep within the bowels of the building, they stumbled upon something extraordinary. Behind a collapsed wall, partially hidden by rubble, was a sleek black box about the size of a briefcase. Unlike everything else they'd encountered so far, it appeared untouched by time. When Daniel touched it, the surface lit up with a soft Blue glow, what is that? Lavra whispered, her eyes wide. It looks like some kind of data core, Daniel replied, examining it closely. If we can access it, maybe we'll finally get some answers. He fiddled with the device for several minutes, trying to figure out how to activate it. Finally, with a quiet hum, the core projected a holographic image into the air. The image wavered and flickered, but it was clear enough to make out the figure of a woman speaking urgently. To whoever finds this message, listen carefully, the woman began. Her voice was strained, almost panicked. My name is Rachel Hayes. If you're seeing this, then the reckoning has begun. We tried to stop it, but it's too late. The Caliph, they've turned on us. They promised salvation, but all they brought was destruction. Daniel exchanged a glance with Lavra, both of them frozen in stunned silence. The only hope left is Project Exodus, Rachel continued. Nathan Cole believes he can save us by merging our consciousness with the Caliph network. But I don't. Trust him. Something isn't right. Please warn the others if you can. Don't let them. The message cut off abruptly, leaving the room eerily silent. Daniel stared at the empty space where the hologram had been, his mind racing. Who was Nathan Cole? What exactly was Project Exodus? And what did the Caliph have to do with humanity's disappearance? Before he could process any of it, Lavra gasped sharply. Look at this, she exclaimed, pointing to the wall behind them. Carved into the smooth metal were intricate symbols unlike anything either of them had ever seen. They spiraled outward in complex patterns, glowing faintly with an otherworldly light. These aren't human, Lavra said, her voice trembling slightly. They're alien. Daniel frowned, stepping closer to inspect the markings. You think the Caliph made these? It's possible, Lavra replied. Their technology always involved organic components. These could be part of their neural network. A chill ran down Daniel's spine as he realized the implications. If the Caliph truly were involved in humanity's downfall, then whatever secrets lay buried here were far more dangerous than he'd anticipated. We need to take this data core back to the ship, he said firmly. And we need to move fast. Whoever or whatever did this might still be watching. Lavra nodded, though her expression betrayed her unease. Together, they carefully packed up the core and began retracing their steps back toward the starlight. Every sound, every movement felt amplified in the oppressive silence of the ruins. By the time they reached the ship, both were visibly shaken, though neither wanted to admit it. As Daniel powered up the engines and prepared for takeoff, Lavra sat quietly in the co-pilot's seat, staring out at the barren landscape below. Do you think we'll ever find out what really happened to them? She asked softly. Daniel hesitated, his hands hovering over the controls. I don't know, he admitted. But I do know one thing, we can't turn back now. Whatever truth is waiting for us out there, we owe it to them to find it. With that, the starlight lifted off the ground, leaving the desolate remains of Epsilon 7 behind. But as they soared into the stars, neither Daniel nor Lavra noticed the faint shimmer of movement in the corner of the Patihua cockpit, a shadow darker than the void itself. Back aboard the starlight, Daniel Carter and Lavra Bennett worked in tense silence, their minds racing as they analyzed the mysterious data core recovered from Epsilon 7. The ship's small lab was cluttered with tools, wires, and screens displaying streams of fragmented information. Daniel sat hunched over the console, his fingers flying across the keyboard as he tried to piece together the corrupted files. Lavra stood nearby, holding a cup of coffee that had long gone cold, her eyes fixed on the holographic projections hovering above the core. This is insane, Daniel muttered under his breath, shaking his head. Half of these logs are encrypted, and the other half don't make any sense. Lavra leaned closer, squinting at the text scrolling across one of the monitors. Wait, look here. It says something about a scientist named Nathan Cole. Daniel paused, his brow furrowing, Nathan Cole. Wasn't he involved in some kind of experimental project before the war ended? I think so, Lavra replied, flipping through her notes. There were rumors about him working on something called Project Exodus. People said it was supposed to save humanity or destroy it. Daniel frowned, his fingers tapping impatiently against the desk. That matches what Rachel Hayes mentioned in the message. She said Cole believed merging human consciousness with the Caliph network could save us. But clearly, something went wrong. As they dug deeper into the data, fragments of the story began to emerge. Logs revealed that Cole had been conducting experiments on volunteers colonists desperate for a way to escape the chaos of the war. He claimed the Caliph's neural network offered a path to immortality, a chance to transcend physical existence and join a collective mind spanning the stars. At first, the results seemed promising. Volunteers reported heightened awareness and an overwhelming sense of unity. But then things took a dark turn. The later entries are disturbing, Lavra said quietly, reading from another screen. People started disappearing, not just physically, but completely. Like their minds were erased. And those who remained began acting strangely, almost like they weren't themselves anymore. Daniel nodded grimly. It sounds like the Caliph didn't keep their end of the bargain. Whatever this merging process was, it wasn't salvation, it was assimilation. A sudden alert interrupted their conversation, causing both of them to jump. One of the monitors lit up with a map of the galaxy, highlighting a cluster of coordinates near the edge of explored space. A label appeared beside it, Andromeda Gateway. What's this? Lavra asked, pointing to the glowing marker. Daniel leaned forward, studying the display. I've heard legends about this place. Some say it's a portal to another galaxy, a last-ditch effort by humanity to flee the reckoning. If Cole's experiments failed, maybe some survivors tried to escape through here. Laura's eyes widened. Do you think anyone made it? Could there still be humans out there? It's possible, Daniel admitted, though his tone was cautious. But if we're going to find out, we'll need to follow this trail. The question is, are we ready for what we might find? The decision weighed heavily on both of them as the starlight charted a course toward the galactic rim. Days passed in uneasy quiet, the vast emptiness outside their windows serving as a constant reminder of how alone they were. Lavra spent most of her time poring over the data core, piecing together more details about Project Exodus while Daniel focused on navigating the treacherous regions ahead. Neither spoke much, each lost in their own thoughts. One evening, as they shared a meal in the cramped mess hall, Lavra suddenly looked up from her plate. Have you noticed anything strange lately? She asked hesitantly. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Strange how? She hesitated, choosing her words carefully. It's hard to explain. I've been having these dreams, vivid ones. I'm standing among the stars, surrounded by light. And I can hear voices, whispers. They're calling my name, but I can't understand what they're saying. Daniel set down his fork, studying her closely. You think it's connected to the symbols we found on Epsilon 7? I don't know, Lavra admitted, rubbing her temples. Maybe, or maybe I'm just losing my mind. You're not losing your mind, Daniel said firmly, though his expression betrayed a flicker of doubt. We've seen enough weird stuff already to know that something bigger is at play here. Just try not to let it get to you, okay? Lavra nodded, though she didn't look convinced. Their journey took a darker turn when the starlight encountered a derelict vessel drifting aimlessly near the galactic rim. Its hull was battered and scarred, its systems dead except for a faint emergency beacon blinking weakly in the void. Against his better judgment, Daniel decided to investigate. Are you sure about this? Lavra asked nervously as they suited up for an EV. This feels like a bad idea. We can't ignore it, Daniel replied, checking his oxygen levels. If there's even a chance it holds answers, we have to check it out. The interior of the ship was eerily silent. its corridors dimly lit by the faint glow of emergency lights. As they moved deeper inside, they discovered the remains of the crew frozen in place, their faces twisted in expressions of sheer terror. It was as if they'd been caught in the middle of some unimaginable horror, unable to escape. In the bridge, they found a recording device still functioning despite the passage of time. When they played it back, a man's voice crackled through the static, trembling with fear. "They're coming for us. The shadows, we didn't know what we were doing. Cole lied to us. Don't trust them." "Don't." The message cut off abruptly, leaving behind only silence. Larva shuddered, clutching Daniel's arm. What did he mean by shadows? Before Daniel could respond, the temperature in the room plummeted. The lights flickered, and a low guttural hum filled the air. Slowly, shapes began to form in the darkness, indistinct figures writhing and twisting like smoke given life. Their presence was suffocating, pressing down on them with an invisible weight. "We need to leave." "Now!" Daniel shouted, grabbing Laura's hand and pulling her toward the exit. They barely made it back to the starlight before the shadows manifested fully, clawing at the airlock doors as if trying to follow them. Once safely aboard, Laura collapsed onto the floor, gasping for breath. Her hands trembled as she clutched a small device she'd been working on, an experimental neural dampener designed to block telepathic intrusion. That was close. "She whispered, her voice shaky. "Too close." Daniel knelt beside her, his face pale. What the hell were those things? "I don't know," Lavra admitted, her eyes wide with fear. "But I think they're remnants, what's left of the people who failed the transition into the Caliph network. They're trapped between worlds, consumed by rage and despair." The encounter left both of them shaken, forcing them to confront the reality of the danger they faced. Whatever secrets lay ahead, they knew now that the cost of uncovering them might be higher than either had anticipated. Despite the growing unease, Daniel refused to turn back. "We've come too far to give up now," he said firmly as they prepared to resume their journey. "If there's even a chance we can learn the truth about what happened to humanity, we owe it to them to keep going." Lavra nodded reluctantly, though her dreams grew more intense with each passing night. The whispers became clearer, urging her to seek out the Ascended, the transformed remnants of humanity, rumored to exist beyond the Nexus Gate. She didn't tell Daniel about them, fearing he'd dismiss her visions as stress or paranoia. But deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that the answers they sought lay waiting on the other side. Finally, after weeks of travel, they reached the coordinates marked on the map, a massive ring-like structure floating in the darkness. Known as the Nexus Gate, it pulsed with energy, its surface shimmering like liquid metal. As they approached, Lavra felt a strange pull, a sensation that tugged at her very soul. "This is it," Daniel said quietly, his voice tinged with awe. "The gateway to Andromeda." Lavra stared at the structure, her heart pounding. For the first time, she understood why the Ascended had chosen to leave behind their physical forms. Beyond the gate lay infinite possibilities, a realm where thoughts shaped reality and existence, transcended mortal limitations. But crossing the threshold meant leaving everything they knew behind, including the fragile sense of self that defined them as human. As the starlight hovered before the gateway, Daniel turned to Lavra, his expression conflicted. "Are you sure about this?" he asked. "Once we go through, there's no turning back." Lavra hesitated, torn between the promise of ascension and the fear of losing herself. In the end, she realized the choice wasn't hers alone to make. "It's not just about us," she said softly. "It's about finding out what happened to everyone else. We owe it to them to see this through." With a deep breath, Daniel nodded. Together, they guided the starlight into the swirling vortex, leaving the known galaxy behind. As the light enveloped them, Laura closed her eyes, listening to the whispers one last time. They weren't frightening anymore, they were comforting, guiding her towards something greater. On the other side, They emerged into a breathtaking expanse unlike anything they'd ever seen. Stars burned brighter here, their light weaving intricate patterns across the sky. Ethereal landscapes stretched endlessly, shifting and changing with every thought. And amidst it all stood luminous beings radiating warmth and wisdom, the Ascended. Daniel Carter stood frozen, staring at the glowing figure before him. Emily, his sister, whom he had thought lost forever, was standing there, radiating light and warmth. Her presence was both comforting and overwhelming, like stepping into a memory that felt too vivid to be real. He wanted to reach out, to touch her, but something held him back. She wasn't human anymore, not in the way he understood humanity. Lavra Bennett shifted uncomfortably beside him, her eyes darting between Daniel and Emily. The Ascended's offer hung heavy in the air. Join them in their eternal unity or return to the physical world and face the remnants, the shadowy entities that haunted the void. It was a choice neither of them were ready to make, but time was slipping away. "Why didn't you tell me?" Daniel finally managed to ask, his voice cracking slightly. "Why did you leave without saying goodbye?" Emily's expression softened, though her luminous form remained steady. "I didn't have a choice," she said gently. "The transition wasn't voluntary for everyone. Some of us resisted, clinging to our old lives until the very end. Others we accepted because it was the only way to survive. But at what cost?" Lavra interjected, her tone sharp with emotion. "You're not the same person anymore. You've lost pieces of yourself." Emily nodded slowly, her glow dimming just a fraction. "Yes, we have. Every day, fragments of who we were slip further away. But we are also part of something greater, now a collective consciousness that spans galaxies. We see, we feel, we exist in ways you cannot imagine." Daniel shook his head, struggling to process her words. "And what about those who refused? What happened to them?" "They faded," Emily replied simply. "Some chose death over losing their individuality. Others became the shadows you encountered, the remnants of failed transitions. They are trapped, consumed by anger and despair, unable to move on." Lavra shivered at the mention of the shadows. She could still feel their cold presence pressing against her mind, even though they were far behind them now. "Is there no way to help them?" she asked quietly. Emily hesitated, her gaze flickering toward the endless expanse around them. "There may be a way, but it is dangerous. To free the remnants would require disrupting the Caliph network itself, a task that could destroy everything we've built here. We can't just leave them like that," Daniel said firmly, his voice rising. "They're human, or they were. We owe it to them to try." Emily studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. "If you choose to fight, we will guide you. We will give you knowledge and tools to combat the remnants. But know this, failure means the complete annihilation of humanity's legacy. If the network collapses, so do we, all of us." The weight of her words settled over them like a storm cloud. Daniel glanced at Lavra, searching her face for any sign of doubt. Her jaw was set, her eyes blazing with determination. Whatever fear she might have felt earlier had been replaced by resolve. "We'll do it," she said, her voice steady. "We'll go back and fight for those who can't fight for themselves." Daniel nodded in agreement, though his heart ached at the thought of leaving Emily behind. "Will we ever see you again?" he asked, turning back to his sister. Emily smiled faintly, her glow brightening once more. "In a way, yes. You carry a piece of me with you, just as I carry a piece of you. No matter where you go, we are connected." With that, she extended her hand, and a stream of light flowed from her fingertips into the starlight. The ship's systems hummed with newfound energy, and holographic displays lit up with information maps, schematics, and instructions for Optica phones for building weapons capable of neutralizing the remnants. As the Ascended faded into the distance, Daniel and Lavra climbed back aboard the starlight, their minds racing with the enormity of the task ahead. They had been given a chance to rewrite history, to reclaim what was lost, but it came with risks they couldn't fully comprehend. The journey back through the Nexus Gate was disorienting, like being pulled through a kaleidoscope of light and sound. When they emerged on the other side, the familiar stars of the Milky Way greeted them, though they seemed dimmer somehow after the brilliance of Andromeda. Lovra sat quietly in the co-pilot's seat, staring out at the galaxy they had left behind. For the first time, she felt a sense of purpose burning within her, a fire that refused to be extinguished. "We need to rally survivors," Daniel said, breaking the silence. "If we're going to take on the remnants, we'll need all the help we can get." Lovra nodded. "There are colonies scattered across the rim, places too remote to be touched by the war. If anyone survived, they'll be hiding there." Over the next several weeks, they traveled from system to system, following leads and piecing together rumors of hidden outposts. Many of the places they visited were deserted, their inhabitants long gone. But eventually, they found signs of life, a small group of humans living in an abandoned mining facility on the edge of a dying star. The leader of the group, a grizzled man named Alex Monroe, greeted them with suspicion. "Who sent you?" he demanded, his hand resting on the hilt of a plasma rifle. "How do we know you're not one of them?" "One of who?" Lovra asked, raising her hands in a gesture of peace. "The shadows," Alex spat, his eyes narrowing. "They come in the night, stealing people away. We've lost half our colony already." Daniel stepped forward, holding up the data core they had recovered from Epsilon 7. "We know what's causing this. We've seen it before, and we think we can stop it, but we can't do it alone." Alex hesitated, glancing at the others gathered behind him. Finally, he lowered his weapon. "All right, tell us what you need." With Alex's help, they began organizing the survivors, teaching them how to use the weapons and defenses provided by the Ascended. Word spread quickly, and soon, other groups joined their cause. Together, they formed the Coalition, a fragile alliance united by a shared goal: to reclaim their future from the remnants. As preparations continued, Lovra found herself plagued by doubts. The Ascended's warnings echoed in her mind, reminding her of the stakes. One misstep, one failure, and everything would unravel. She confided in Daniel one evening as they worked late into the night, assembling the final components of their arsenal. "What if we're wrong?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "What if this is all for nothing?" Daniel paused, setting down the tool in his hand. "We won't know unless we try," he said simply. "And even if we fail, at least we'll have tried. That's more than most people can say." His words brought her some measure of comfort, though the knot of anxiety in her stomach remained. There was no turning back now. They had committed to this path, and they would see it through to the end. When the day of the battle finally arrived, the Coalition assembled near the ruins of an ancient Kelith outpost. Intelligence suggested it was a focal point for the remnants' activity, a nexus where the shadowy entities converged. Armed with advanced weaponry and guided by the knowledge imparted by the Ascended, the survivors prepared to face their darkest fears. As the first wave of shadows descended upon them, the air crackled with tension. Lovra gripped her weapon tightly, her heart pounding in her chest. Beside her, Daniel stood resolute, his eyes locked on the horizon. "For humanity," he said quietly, his voice carrying over the com channel to every fighter present. "For humanity," Lovra echoed, her voice steadier than she expected. With that, the battle began. Plasma bolts streaked across the sky, illuminating the battlefield in bursts of light. The remnants surged forward, their forms writhing and twisting like smoke given life. Despite their numbers, the Coalition fought with a ferocity born of desperation. Each shot fired was a declaration of defiance, a refusal to let the past define their future. Slowly but surely, the tide began to turn. The weapons designed by the Ascended proved effective, dispersing the shadows and driving them back, but victory came at a cost. Lives were lost, sacrifices made in the name of freedom. By the time the last remnant dissolved into nothingness, the survivors stood amidst the wreckage, battered but unbroken in the aftermath. Daniel and Lavra recorded their journey, ensuring that future generations would remember the lessons learned. The stars still whispered of humanity's vanished past, but now they carried a new message, one of resilience, hope, and the enduring spirit of exploration. Though the scars of the war would never fully heal, humanity had taken its first steps toward a brighter future. As the starlight drifted among the stars, its engines humming softly, Laura looked out at the vast expanse before them. "Where do we go from here?" she asked, her voice tinged with both exhaustion and wonder. Daniel smiled faintly, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "Forward," he said simply. "Always forward." The battle against the remnants had been won, but the cost weighed heavily on everyone involved. The coalition survivors gathered amidst the ruins of the Kelith outpost, their faces etched with exhaustion and grief. Bodies lay scattered across the battlefield, each one a reminder of the sacrifices made. Lovra Bennett knelt beside a fallen fighter, her hands trembling as she closed his eyes. She didn't know his name, but she knew he had fought for something greater than himself. For humanity. Daniel Carter stood nearby, staring at the horizon where the last remnants had dissolved into nothingness. His weapon hung loosely in his hand, its energy cells depleted. He felt hollow, as though the fight had drained not just his strength, but also a part of his soul. Yet, despite the pain, there was a flicker of hope, a fragile ember that refused to be extinguished. "We did it," Lovra said softly, rising to her feet. Her voice was hoarse from shouting commands during the battle, but it carried a quiet determination. "We stopped them." "For now," Daniel replied, turning to face her. His expression was grim. "But this isn't over. The Kelith network is still out there, and so are the Ascended. We've only scratched the surface." Lavra nodded, her gaze sweeping over the weary survivors tending to the wounded and mourning their dead. "What do we do next? Where do we go from here?" Daniel hesitated, his mind racing. The Ascended had given them the tools to fight the remnants, but they had also warned of the dangers of disrupting the Kelith network. If humanity wanted to move forward, they would need to find a way to coexist with the technology that had once threatened to consume them or destroy it entirely. "We need answers," he said finally. "If we're going to rebuild, we have to understand what went wrong with Project Exodus. That means finding Nathan Cole, or what's left of him." Over the next few days, the Coalition worked tirelessly to salvage supplies and repair damaged equipment. The ruins of the Kelith outpost provided valuable resources, including fragments of alien technology that could be repurposed for their mission. But the work was slow and grueling, and tensions began to rise among the survivors. Some argued that they should abandon their quest and focus on rebuilding their lives, while others insisted that uncovering the truth was the only way to ensure humanity's survival. Lovra found herself caught in the middle of the debate. While she agreed with Daniel about the importance of understanding the past, she couldn't ignore the growing unease among the group. Many were tired of fighting, weary of chasing shadows. They wanted peace, even if it meant leaving questions unanswered. One evening, as the survivors gathered around a makeshift fire, Alex Monroe, the leader of the mining colony, spoke up. "I get why you two want to keep pushing," he said, gesturing toward Daniel and Lavra. "But not all of us signed up for this. Some of us just want to live our lives without looking over our shoulders every second." Daniel met his gaze, his jaw tightening. "I'm not asking anyone to stay," he said firmly. "This isn't about revenge or glory. It's about making sure no one else has to suffer like we did. If we walk away now, we're letting the mistakes of the past repeat themselves." Alex sighed, rubbing a hand over his face. "And what happens if you fail? What happens if messing with the Calave network tears apart whatever's left of us? I don't know, Daniel admitted. But doing nothing guarantees failure. At least this way, we have a chance. After a long silence, Alex nodded reluctantly. All right. You've got my support for now. But if things start falling apart, I'm pulling my people out. Daniel accepted the compromise, though he knew it wouldn't be enough to satisfy everyone. As the meeting broke up, Lavra approached him, her expression troubled. He's right, she said quietly. Not everyone is cut out for this. Are we asking too much of them? Maybe, Daniel replied. But sometimes doing the right thing means making hard choices. If we can stop another war, another reckoning, then it'll be worth it. Lavra wanted to believe him, but doubt lingered in the back of her mind. She had seen firsthand how quickly hope could turn to despair, how easily unity could fracture under pressure. Still, she couldn't deny the spark of purpose that had ignited within her since joining the fight. For the first time in years, she felt like she was part of something bigger than herself. Their search for Nathan Cole led them to a remote sector of the galaxy, where rumors spoke of a hidden research station abandoned after the war. According to fragmented logs recovered from Epsilon 7, Cole had used the facility to conduct his experiments on merging human consciousness with the Caliph network. If anyone knew the truth about Project Exodus, it would be there. The journey was fraught with danger. The region was riddled with asteroid fields and unstable gravity wells, making navigation treacherous. Supplies were running low, and tempers flared as fatigue set in. Despite the challenges, the coalition pressed on, driven by a shared sense of purpose. When they finally reached the coordinates, they discovered a derelict space station floating silently in the void. Its exterior was scarred by micrometeorite impacts, and sections of the hull had collapsed under the strain of time. Docking with the structure required precision and patience, but eventually, they managed to secure the Starlight to an airlock. Inside, the station was eerily silent. The corridors were dark, lit only by the faint glow of emergency lights. Dust coated every surface, and the air smelled stale and metallic. Lavra shivered as they stepped deeper into the labyrinthine complex, her footsteps echoing through the empty halls. This place gives me the creeps, she muttered, clutching her weapon tightly. Daniel nodded, his flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. Stay close, we don't know what's waiting for us. As they explored, they found evidence of frantic activity frozen in time. Desks were cluttered with notes and diagrams, walls covered in scrawled equations. In one room, they discovered a series of containment pods, most of them empty, but a few still held occupants. Their bodies were skeletal, their features distorted by some unknown process. What happened to them? Lavra whispered, her voice shaking. Side effects of the transition, Daniel guessed, his tone grim. Cole must have pushed too far. Too fast. They pressed on, following a trail of clues that eventually led them to the heart of the station, a massive chamber dominated by a pulsating core of Caliph technology. Wires snaked across the floor, connecting the device to rows of consoles and monitors. At the center of the room stood a figure slumped over a control panel. Is that? Lavra began, her voice trailing off. Daniel moved cautiously toward the figure, his weapon raised. As he drew closer, he recognized the man from old photographs, Nathan Cole, or what was left of him. His body was frail, his skin translucent and stretched tightly over his bones. His eyes fluttered open as they approached, clouded with madness. You shouldn't have come here, Cole rasped, his voice barely audible. It's too late, the reckoning. It's already begun. What are you talking about? Daniel demanded, stepping closer. What did you do? Cole laughed weakly, a sound that sent chills down Laura's spine. I tried to save us. I thought I could merge humanity with the Caliph to make us stronger, immortal. But I underestimated them. They didn't want to share. They wanted to consume. Who? Lavra asked, her voice trembling. The Kelith? Cole nodded slowly, his gaze distant. They are ancient, far older than we ever imagined. Their network is alive, growing, evolving. When we connected to it, we became part of their design. And now they see us as a threat. Before Daniel could press further, alarms blared throughout the station. Lights flashed red, and the core began to hum with increasing intensity. The system's destabilizing, Lavra shouted, backing away. We need to leave. Cole grabbed Daniel's arm with surprising strength, his grip icy cold. Destroy it, he pleaded, his eyes wide with desperation. If you value your freedom, destroy the core. It's the only way to stop them. Daniel hesitated, torn between compassion and caution. Finally, he nodded. Let's go. Together. They sprinted toward the exit, dodging falling debris as the station began to collapse around them. Behind them, the core erupted in a blinding flash of light, sending shockwaves rippling through the structure. By the time they reached the starlight, the entire station was consumed in a fiery explosion. Back aboard their ship, the survivors watched in stunned silence as the wreckage drifted into the void. Lavra leaned against the cockpit doorway, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. Do you think it's really over? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know, Daniel admitted, his gaze fixed on the stars ahead. But we've taken a step. Maybe that's all we can do, one step at a time. For now, the galaxy still whispered of humanity's vanished past. But those whispers carried a new message, one of resilience, hope, and the enduring spirit of exploration. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Daniel and Lara knew they would face them together, united by a shared belief in the future. As the starlight soared into the unknown, Lavra allowed herself a small smile. The road ahead would be difficult, but for the first time in a long time, she felt ready to meet it. The destruction of Nathan Cole's research station marked a turning point for Daniel Carter, Lavra Bennett, and the coalition of survivors. Though they had eliminated one threat, the knowledge they gained from Cole weighed heavily on their minds. The Kelith network was not just a tool or a system, that was alive, intelligent, and growing. It saw humanity as an obstacle to its evolution, a problem to be solved. And while the remnants had been defeated, the true danger still loomed in the shadows. As the starlight drifted through the void, the survivors debated their next move. Some argued that they should retreat to a safe corner of the galaxy, rebuild what little remained of human civilization, and forget about the Kelith altogether. Others believed that running would only delay the inevitable, that sooner or later, the network would find them again. Daniel stood at the center of the debate, his resolve unwavering. We can't hide forever, he said firmly during one heated discussion in the ship's cramped mess hall. If we don't confront this now, we're signing our own death warrant. The Kelith won't stop until it consumes everything we are. But how do we fight something like that? Alex Monroe asked, his voice tinged with frustration. It's not a ship or an army, it's a living thing spread across the stars. We don't even know where to start. Lavra stepped forward, her expression calm but determined. We start by understanding it, she said. Cole's notes gave us clues about how the network operates. If we can find its central hub, the source of its intelligence, we might be able to disable it. And if we can't? Someone else asked hesitantly. Then we'll die trying, Daniel replied without hesitation. But at least we'll have tried to protect the future. Though far from unanimous, the group eventually agreed to follow Daniel and Laura's plan. They couldn't afford to turn back, not after everything they'd sacrificed to get this far. Using the data salvaged from Cole's station, the coalition mapped out potential locations for the Kelith's central hub. The most promising lead pointed to a distant star system shrouded in mystery, a region known as the Veil. Ancient legends described it as a place where reality itself seemed to unravel, a boundary between dimensions. Few ships had ventured there, and even fewer had returned. The journey to the Veil took weeks, during which tensions aboard the Starlight ran high. Supplies were dwindling, tempers flared, and the weight of their mission pressed down on everyone. Lavra spent much of her time poring over Cole's research, searching for anything they might have missed. Daniel focused on navigating the treacherous routes ahead, his mind racing with strategies and contingencies. One night, as the ship drifted silently through the darkness, Lavra sat alone in the cockpit, staring out at the endless expanse of stars. She felt a strange pull, a sensation she couldn't quite explain. It was as though the galaxy itself was calling to her, whispering secrets only she could hear. "You okay?" Daniel asked, startling her as he entered the room. She nodded, though her expression betrayed her unease. "I keep thinking about the Vey." "Ascended," she admitted. "About Emily. Do you think we made the right choice, leaving them behind?" Daniel sighed, leaning against the doorway. "I don't know," he said honestly. "Maybe there isn't a right choice. All we can do is trust our instincts and hope we're doing the best we can." Lavra smiled faintly, appreciating his honesty. "What if we fail? What if the Keleth wins?" "Then we make sure it costs them everything," Daniel replied, his voice steady. "Humanity has always been defined by its resilience. Even if we fall, we'll leave a mark they'll never forget." His words brought her some measure of comfort, though the uncertainty lingered. For now, all they could do was press on. When they finally reached the Veil, the Coalition found themselves in a surreal landscape unlike anything they had ever seen. The stars here were blurred and distorted, their light bending as if refracted through water. Massive structures floated in the void, towering spires of alien design that pulsed with an eerie glow. At the heart of it all lay a colossal structure. "The Keleth Hub. It's beautiful," Lavra whispered, her voice filled with awe. "And terrifying," Daniel added, his gaze fixed on the massive construct. "That thing controls the entire network. If we destroy it, we destroy the Keleth. But what happens to the Ascended?" Lavra asked, her brow furrowing. "They're part of the network too. If we take this down, we'll lose them." Daniel hesitated, the weight of the decision settling over him. "We don't have a choice," he said finally. "If we don't do this, humanity doesn't stand a chance. I'm sorry." Lavra nodded reluctantly, though her heart ached at the thought of losing Emily and all the others who had chosen ascension. For better or worse, their fates were intertwined with the Keleth. Destroying the hub would mean severing that connection forever. The assault on the Keleth hub was chaotic and desperate. The Coalition launched every weapon they had, targeting the structure's defenses while dodging retaliatory attacks from automated drones and energy beams. Inside the hub, Daniel and Lavra led a small team deep into the core, fighting their way past traps and guardians designed to protect the network. As they approached the central chamber, Lavra felt the same strange pull she had experienced earlier, but stronger this time, almost overwhelming. She realized it wasn't just the Keleth calling to her. It was the Ascended, reaching out one last time. "Emily?" she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. A soft voice echoed in her mind, gentle yet firm. "You must let go," it said. "This is the path you chose. Trust in yourselves and in the legacy you leave behind." Lavra clenched her fists, forcing herself to focus. "I'm sorry," she murmured, her voice breaking. "I wish things could have been different." The final stretch to the core was the hardest. The air grew thick with static electricity, and the walls shimmered with shifting patterns of light. In the center of the chamber stood a pulsating sphere of energy, the heart of the Keleth network. As Daniel planted explosives around its base, Lavra worked frantically to disable the failsafes designed to protect it. "This is it," Daniel said, glancing at her. "Ready?" Lavra nodded, though her hands trembled as she finished her task. Together, they activated the detonation sequence and sprinted toward the exit. Behind them, the sphere began to destabilize, sending shockwaves rippling through the structure. By the time they reached the starlight, the hub was engulfed in a blinding explosion that lit up the veil like a second sun. The survivors watched in stunned silence as the massive construct collapsed into nothingness, its glow fading into the void. In the aftermath, the galaxy seemed quieter, emptier, somehow. The whispers that had haunted humanity for generations were gone, replaced by an eerie stillness. For the first time in centuries, the stars belonged solely to those who gazed upon them. Back aboard the Starlight, Lavra sat alone in the cockpit, staring out at the vast expanse before her. She felt a profound sense of loss, but also a glimmer of hope. The Caliph were gone, and with them, the Ascended. But humanity remained scarred, battered, but alive. Daniel joined her after a while, sitting beside her in companionable silence. "Do you think we did the right thing?" he asked softly. Lara hesitated before answering. "I don't know," she admitted. "But I think Emily would be proud of us, of all of us." Daniel smiled faintly, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "Yeah, me too." For now, the galaxy still whispered of humanity's vanished past. But those whispers carried a new message, one of resilience, courage, and the enduring spirit of exploration. Whatever challenges lay ahead, humanity would face them together, united by the belief that their story was far from over. As the starlight soared into the unknown, Lavra allowed herself a small smile. The road ahead would be difficult, but for the first time in a long time, she felt ready to meet it. After the battle against the remnants, Daniel Carter and Lara Bennett found themselves standing at a crossroads. The coalition of survivors had won a hard-fought victory, but the cost had been immense. Lives were lost, resources depleted, and spirits worn thin. Yet, amidst the wreckage of the Caliph outpost, there was a fragile sense of hope, a belief that humanity could rise from the ashes of its past mistakes. Daniel stood near the edge of the battlefield, staring out at the horizon, where the last remnants had dissolved into nothingness. His weapon lay at his feet, its energy cells drained after hours of relentless fighting. He felt hollow, as though the weight of everything they had endured had carved out a piece of his soul. But despite the emptiness, a spark of determination burned within him, a quiet resolve to keep moving forward. Lavra approached him, her steps slow and deliberate. Her face was smudged with dirt, her clothes torn from the chaos of the fight, but her eyes shone with a fierce intensity. "We did it," she said softly, her voice hoarse from shouting commands during the battle. "We stopped them." "For now," Daniel replied, his tone cautious. "But this isn't over. The Caliph network is still out there, and so are the Ascended. We've only scratched the surface." Lavra nodded, her gaze sweeping over the weary survivors tending to the wounded and mourning their dead. Bodies lay scattered across the battlefield, each one a reminder of the sacrifices made. "What do we do next?" she asked, her voice tinged with exhaustion. "Where do we go from here?" Daniel hesitated, his mind racing. The Ascended had given them the tools to fight the remnants, but they had also warned of the dangers of disrupting the Caliph network. If humanity wanted to move forward, they would need to find a way to coexist with the alien technology or destroy it entirely. "We need answers," Daniel said finally. "If we're going to rebuild, we have to understand what went wrong. With Project Exodus, that means finding Nathan Cole, or what's left of him." The decision to hunt for Nathan Cole sparked heated debate among the survivors. Many were eager to leave the war behind and focus on rebuilding their lives, while others believed uncovering the truth was essential to ensuring humanity's survival. Alex Monroe, the leader of the mining colony, voiced his concerns during a meeting held in the ruins of the outpost. "I get why you two want to keep pushing," Alex said, gesturing toward Daniel and Lavra. "But not all of us signed up for this. Some of us just want to live our lives without looking over our shoulders every second." Daniel met his gaze, his jaw tightening. "I'm not asking anyone to stay," he said firmly. This isn't about revenge or glory. It's about making. Sure, no one else has to suffer like we did. If we walk away now, we're letting the mistakes of the past repeat themselves. Alex sighed, rubbing a hand over his face. And what happens if you fail? What happens if messing with the Khalid network tears apart whatever's left of us? I don't know, Daniel admitted. But doing nothing guarantees failure. At least this way, we have a chance. After a long silence, Alex nodded reluctantly. All right. You've got my support for now. But if things start falling apart, I'm pulling my people out. Daniel accepted the compromise, though he knew it wouldn't be enough to satisfy everyone. As the meeting broke up, Lavra approached him, her expression troubled. He's right, she said quietly. Not everyone is cut out for this. Are we asking too much of them? Maybe, Daniel replied. But sometimes doing the right thing means making hard choices. If we can stop another war, another reckoning, then it'll be worth it. Lavra wanted to believe him, but doubt lingered in the back of her mind. She had seen firsthand how quickly hope could turn to despair, how easily unity could fracture under pressure. Still, she couldn't deny the spark of purpose that had ignited within her since joining the fight. For the first time in years, she felt like she was part of something bigger than herself. Their search for Nathan Cole led them to a remote sector of the galaxy, where rumors spoke of a hidden research station abandoned after the war. According to fragmented logs recovered from Epsilon 7, Cole had used the facility to conduct his experiments on merging human consciousness with the Keleth network. If anyone knew the truth about Project Exodus, it would be there. The journey was fraught with danger. The region was riddled with asteroid fields and unstable gravity wells, making navigation treacherous. Supplies were running low, and tempers flared as fatigue set in. Despite the challenges, the coalition pressed on, driven by a shared sense of purpose. When they finally reached the coordinates, they discovered a derelict space station floating silently in the void. Its exterior was scarred by micrometeorite impacts, and sections of the hull had collapsed under the strain of time. Docking with the structure required precision and patience, but eventually, they managed to secure the Starlight to an airlock. Inside, the station was eerily silent. The corridors were dark, lit only by the faint glow of emergency lights. Dust coated every surface, and the air smelled stale and metallic. Lavra shivered as they stepped deeper into the labyrinthine complex, her footsteps echoing through the empty halls. This place gives me the creeps, she muttered, clutching her weapon tightly. Daniel nodded, his flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. Stay close. We don't know what's waiting for us. As they explored, they found evidence of frantic activity frozen in time. Desks were cluttered with notes and diagrams, walls covered in scrawled equations. In one room they discovered a series of containment pods, most of them empty, but a few still held occupants. Their bodies were skeletal, their features distorted by some unknown process. What happened to them? Lavra whispered, her voice shaking. Side effects of the transition, Daniel guessed, his tone grim. Cole must have pushed too far. Too fast. They pressed on, following a trail of clues that eventually led them to the heart of the station, a massive chamber dominated by a pulsating core of Keleth technology. Wires snaked across the floor, connecting the device to rows of consoles and monitors. At the center of the room stood a figure slumped over a control panel. Is that? Lavra began, her voice trailing off. Daniel moved cautiously toward the figure, his weapon raised. As he drew closer, he recognized the man from old photographs, Nathan Cole, or what was left of him. His body was frail, his skin translucent and stretched tightly over his bones. His eyes fluttered open as they approached, clouded with madness. You shouldn't have come here, Cole rasped, his voice barely audible. It's too late, the reckoning, it's already begun. What are you talking about? Daniel demanded, stepping closer. What did you do? Cole laughed weakly, a sound that sent chills down Laura's spine. I tried to save us. I thought I could merge humanity with the Kelith to make us stronger, immortal. But I underestimated them. They didn't want to share. They wanted to consume. Who? Lavra asked, her voice trembling. The Kelith? Cole nodded slowly, his gaze distant. They are ancient, far older than we ever imagined. Their network is alive, growing, evolving. When we connected to it, we became part of their design. And now they see us as a threat. Before Daniel could press further, alarms blared throughout the station. Lights flashed red, and the core began to hum with increasing intensity. Systems destabilizing, Lavra shouted, backing away. We need to leave. Cole grabbed Daniel's arm with surprising strength, his grip icy cold. Destroy it, he pleaded, his eyes wide with desperation. If you value your freedom, destroy the core. It's the only way to stop them. Daniel hesitated, torn between compassion and caution. Finally he nodded. Let's go. Together. They sprinted toward the exit, dodging falling debris as the station began to collapse around them. Behind them, the core erupted in a blinding flash of light, sending shockwaves rippling through the structure. By the time they reached the starlight, the entire station was consumed in a fiery explosion. Back aboard their ship, the survivors watched in stunned silence as the wreckage drifted into the void. Lavra leaned against the cockpit doorway, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. Do you think it's really over? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know, Daniel admitted, his gaze fixed on the stars ahead. But we've taken a step. Maybe that's all we can do, one step at a time. For now, the galaxy still whispered of humanity's vanished past. But those whispers carried a new message, one of resilience, hope, and the enduring spirit of exploration. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Daniel and Lara knew they would face them together, united by a shared belief in the future. As the starlight soared into the unknown, Lavra allowed herself a small smile. The road ahead would be difficult, but for the first time in a long time, she felt ready to meet it.